to Stuart and Chu Lazar for connecting us with Gordon and the Sojourner Center. And I say that in my when I say the introduction to Sojourner, I also mean myself. I was very fortunate to meet Chu and Stuart through their parents, through Stuart's parents. And because of that, I was very fortunate to learn about the Sojourner Center, which I am very happy and excited that others who might know a little bit about them or maybe don't know anything about Sojourner Center will learn today a lot about what they do. And I think it's tremendous work in this community. And it's, I think, undervalued is one of the things that I think is a good word for this. So when I was able to visit Sojourner Center, I think it really pulls at your strings and at your emotions to really understand that there is an organization and there are people out there that truly care about those that are less fortunate, specifically women who are victims of domestic violence, their children. I think for me, the greatest impact was not necessarily that when you see people who were abused, but seeing the children, I think was something that pulled up my heart, specifically how there was an entire early childcare going on just for the families that were affected because of the domestic violence abuse against their parent. So it is a great, I guess for me, it was a very informative and something that I try to tell others about as well and support in the ways that I can. But I know that this is a mission and a organization that is very close to the heart of Stuart and Chu. And I didn't prepare Stuart, but I think if Stuart wants to do a quick intro to Gordon would be quite appropriate. I think for those of you who don't know Stuart Lazar, he and I share a birthday, and October is actually Domestic Violence Abuse Month, I think, if I'm correct.
Yes.
And October 21st being Stuart's birthday, the Sojourner Center has honored his day as the Stuart Lazar Day. And I know he makes it very special for the women and children that are at Sojourner Center on his birthday and throughout the year, of course, as well. But I'm going to let Stuart, if you don't mind, sorry to ask you off the cuff, to do a quick intro as well.
I'll try. I hate popping these on. Anyway, and thank you, Rabbi Levy. Gordon Sims is a person of extreme passion, commitment, and knowledge. I have learned a lot about domestic violence awareness and issues and sensitivities over the years, and developed into an ambassador giving tours along with my wife Chu, and have been involved for almost 3 decades with this cause. You will find out things about domestic violence that none of us, until you're exposed to something like this or come down and take a tour, as the Rabbi mentioned, it will certainly open your eyes and understand that domestic violence visits all zip codes. 1 in 3 women have been a victim of some type of abuse. And domestic violence is not only physical, it's about control. And it starts with jealousy when there's the dating world turning into control and turning into violence sometimes. But with that, Gordon Sims is our Director of Development, and he will share my description of him in a few minutes. You will feel his passion. Gordon, it's really wonderful to work with you continually over the number of years we've worked together. And last week we just finished a very impactful program. And Gordon Sims, thank you for sharing your time with us.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much, Stuart and Chu and Rabbi. I appreciate it. And domestic violence, I was looking at the people who've spoken before me, and I thought, well, this is going to be kind of a downer of a topic, because I saw you had Jenna Raskin in there speaking and sharing all of her beautiful art and her hearts and her butterflies. But what I guess I'll do to bridge the two things is say that we have a lot of her heart and her butterflies, and here on our campus at Sojourner Center, again, as a result of being introduced to her through Stuart and Chu. So Sojourner Center has been a program and a jewel in the Valley for over 42 years. Sojourner Center's mission is to overcome the impact of domestic violence one life at a time. And I got involved with Sojourner Center about 15 years ago, and I was actually just asked to come on a tour by the executive director and another director. And I thought, oh, of course, I'd love to see what this cute little shelter does. And the first thing that I remember doing was standing at a big metal gate, waiting for somebody to deactivate the lock so that I could enter the shelter. And I felt very physically uncomfortable with that, because I kept thinking, you know, these moms and these kids, all they're doing is leaving a violent spouse, somebody who was abusing them. Why do they have to live in a facility that feels like they are incarcerated? And so that was my first introduction to Sojourner Center, was walking through our big gates and being just so overwhelmed by what I saw. And so just so you know, again, my name is Gordon Sims. I'm the Director of Philanthropy at Sojourner Center. And just to keep with the theme of us also serving pets, I thought I would share with you my favorite cat, whose name is Esther, and she's 20 years old. So that's Esther looking at you from under my blanket. So Sojourner Center, as I said, was founded in 1977. And our first little facility, as you can see on the screen, was a house that was on 4th Avenue, just south of Fillmore Street in Phoenix. And that is where Stuart got his first introduction to Sojourner Center. And that was founded by 3 women who were in school. One was in law school, another one was a social worker. 2 of them were social workers, and they had found out through some research that women were getting released from being incarcerated in Phoenix and Arizona, and just being released onto the streets with nowhere to go. And so they created this little house, and some of them mortgaged their properties. Back when you just had to sign your name that you would agree to pay your loan. Nowadays, you have to, of course, give blood, DNA samples, and your first 2 children. But it was very easy. They bought this little 16-bedroom house, and they started taking women in. And what they learned is that all of the women they were serving, the women who were getting out of jail, had been put in jail because they were defending themselves from an abusive spouse. And so at that time, the founders of Sojourner Center decided to change the mission from women who were just getting out of incarceration into a domestic violence program, which puts Sojourner Center as one of the first and longest running domestic violence programs in the United States. So Sojourner Center started as that 16-bed facility, but this was just in a little residential area in Phoenix. There were no gates around it. There were no camera systems. As a matter of fact, you can actually see on the little picture of the building that it even had a sign on top saying who had painted the building as a way of thanking them, because this was back in the 70s, before we had donor databases and, you know, fancy ways of recognizing donors. And so this became problematic as domestic violence grew with the population growth in the Phoenix area. And I learned from one of our founders a couple years ago, when she was sharing with me the stories of that little house, and learned, excuse me, that one of the abusers actually drove behind the house in the alley, lit a piece of a bandana on fire in a little bottle full of gasoline, threw it over the back wall, and caught the shelter on fire. And it disabled and burned up the back building. And that's when the board of directors and the executive director decided that we needed to start looking for a more discreet location, because it wasn't going to be safe with abusers being able to easily find out where people were staying once they found shelter. And so please excuse some of the pictures. Their orientation has changed from when I first put this together. But now, as you can see, we have a gate that you have to walk through with 10 or 8-foot walls and a very secure campus at a different location on Fillmore near 24th Street in Phoenix. But what really happened is after that little house was there for about 15 years, Sojourner Center banded with some community members and bought the property we are on now, which is several acres in South Phoenix. But the other issue was, and it has been consistent for us, is that as Sojourner Center grows, unfortunately, as the valley grows, we continue to have a turnaway rate of around 50%. And so what that means is for every 10 people who call us for shelter, we can only bring in 5. Then when you couple that today with the fact that we are still experiencing a pandemic with the coronavirus, as a result of safe distancing, we would typically have 94 individuals on this campus with their 16 animal companions. But as a result of safe distancing to mitigate the spread of the virus, we're operating at a 68 total capacity right now to ensure everybody's safety during the pandemic. So a lot of people have asked, wow, since there's a pandemic, I bet your services have really increased. And gosh darn it, we wish they had, but unfortunately, we've actually had to slow down the amount of people we serve because we have to keep the virus outside of our walls. So also now, in comparison to that little house you saw, that wall behind me with my scary bandana mask and my sunglasses, that covers a 4-acre campus with security cameras, mag locks, and cameras that look on the outside and the inside of the campus. Because back to my original point, when I first toured Sojourner Center and saw those walls, I thought it was criminal that the women and children lived in those walls. But what I have learned as being a staff there for years now is that those walls, cameras, and a very secure campus ensure that the women and children feel safe enough while they're on campus to grow and learn and take classes and start to rebuild their lives in a way that is without the violence and with the safety they need to be able to grow and learn. So we currently right now on the campus have capacity for 94 humans and 16 pet companions. And right here, we're just showing you a picture of what one of our typical rooms look like. And as you can see, they are bunk beds. And so the only people who can sleep on top bunks now in a pandemic are the people who are family members who we know aren't going to spread the virus to somebody in a bunk below them. On the right, we have a picture of one of the rooms where we had a family with lots of babies and little kids. And so we also like to stress, and the rabbi touched on this a little bit. So last year we served about 1,100 individuals in our crisis shelter. More than 600 of those were children. So a lot of people think that in a domestic violence campus, you see a lot of single women, but you'll actually see more children on our campuses than you would expect. And a lot of people will also ask, you know, how do you actually stop the cycle of violence? And what we have found is that it is through the children, because quite often children see it, they begin to normalize it, and they grow up thinking that that's what it's like in everybody's family. And so one of the things we spend a lot of time doing here with the kids is teaching them that seeing another person as an object or something to be owned and controlled isn't really, you know, how we're designed as humans. And so we get an opportunity to spend a lot of times with the kids, you know, teaching them that their little sisters and their moms and the other people in their lives are people of value, just like they are. And so working with the kids and the moms in their rooms is part of how we stop violence in its tracks. So another part of the research that we have done at Sojourner Center over the years, and it's also part of us being a low barrier shelter, which means we don't want there to be a lot of check marks that we have to do to get somebody to come into our shelter. We want there to be as few barriers as possible. And one of the barriers that we found, more than 50% of domestic violence families will not leave if they can't bring their pets with them. And there is a lot of research being done in universities around the United States now that show that the bond between a family member and their pets can be just as profound and beneficial as the bonds we have with our other human family members. And so what we have found is that the detriment to separating families from their animals, if we don't have to, is so great. And so we put a pet companion shelter in here at Sojourner Center 5 years ago. And we just added some pictures to highlight to you that we actually don't just always take cats and dogs, but we had a goat on our campus who saved on our landscaping because that goat just loved to eat the grass in our yards. But we take goats, cats, dogs, monitor lizards. We've had parrots. We've had little guinea pigs and all kinds of animals. But the thing that is the most beautiful about the pet companion shelter is to see the kids and the moms being able to visit their animals every day and to keep that growing and healing happening simultaneously. So we're not just a human shelter anymore. We also serve the pets of the families that we serve. And we're actually in the process of making more of our rooms pet friendly so that we can actually serve more families with their pets. And I know to some people, and even to me when we first started doing it, it sounded a little crazy. But I just took some people on a tour earlier today, and when they saw the pet companion shelter, it was a tour of 5 women, and 4 of the 5 women said, I wouldn't leave if I couldn't bring my pets with me. So it was very affirming to have that experience with the people that we were giving the tour today. The other thing that's unique and sets us apart from other domestic violence programs in Arizona, Sojourner Center is the only DV program in the Valley that has a child development center. It's actually a 4-star, first things first, child development certified. It's nationally certified and accredited. And we like it because it gives the kids to express how the abuse has impacted them, but express it in the way that children express discomfort and trauma. And so something that we work for and together in our entire campus is also enhancing the environment. The environment with which the families learn and heal is just as powerful and impactful as how I interact with, or our case managers and our workforce development staff work with the women and children. So we are just as intentional about the environments with which the moms and the kids learn as we are with the quality of people we hire. And so at the Child Development Center, it's fun because everything is down at the eye level for the kids, so they can see their own handiwork and art, but so they can also see lessons about using your hands for hugging and healing and not hurting, and also just enhancing how they learn their alphabet. Sojourner Center is one of 2 domestic violence programs in the United States that is also called trauma certified. So we have spent the last 1.5 years certifying all of our staff so that they know what to look for, behaviors in the moms and the kids and the people we serve that are behaviors that would be responses to having experienced trauma. So when we see a child who is hesitant to taking a nap or really scared when it's time to lay their head down, what we get to do is process with the kids and find out why that might be. And one of the kids, we had a kid here a couple years ago, and every time we asked him to lay his head down on his pillow for a nap, he would get up and run around and scream and hit things. And what we learned is that when it was bedtime in his home, that was usually when his dad would start hurting his mom. And so this little guy had an example in his life of that laying your head down to rest is not a safe time, and it's not a good time in his life. And so what we had to do was sit with him and just hold him and hold his hand and let him start to get more comfortable with nap time and putting his head down on the pillow. And we did that sometimes with his mom as a part of his nap times, so he could learn that nap times are no longer a time when my daddy's going to hurt my mom and it's going to scare me, but now I can actually lay my head down to sleep, and it's safe and it's nurturing and it's okay. And so that's part of what we do at Sojourner Center. But a lot of times, if you just look at that child as being incorrigible or not wanting to fall asleep, we don't get the opportunity to really grow with them and to figure out how to move them beyond that type of trauma. So the Child Development Center is not just that, though, but it's also field trips to the zoo and the Desert Botanical Gardens, and going up north once in a while to see out of Africa, and going to places like Sedona and Flagstaff. When I worked with kids previously in children's behavioral health, I couldn't believe how many kids grew up in the valley and had never gone up north to go sledding. So the Child Development Center is also an opportunity for the children to really explore life, to figure out what they're going to love and what's interesting to them. So as they move from having violence in their homes, they get to really explore the things they love in their lives, which is how we turn children into healthy, productive, brilliant adults. And so that also means that we twice a week let the kids have the hoses and water implements, and they can have water time. We also occasionally get visits from sports teams, and we've had people from the Cardinals and other teams here to get the kids riled up about sports and other things. So we also like to let people know that Sojourner Center isn't a sad place of despair where women are just lined up waiting to be released back into the society that they came from. But it's a place where they get to not just use their voices again, but where we actually get to teach them to hear themselves laugh and to get joy in experiencing life with their children, and to see the things in life that are funny. Because, you know, you have all heard the cliche statement about it takes a lot more muscles to frown than smile. But it's also really important to laugh and smile, because it really does rewire how our brains see the world, how the kids see adults and life, and how the families see life moving beyond the abuse that they've suffered. So our campus right now, a family can stay on the campus for about 120 days. And that's what we've determined. It really takes that amount of time for them to really kind of get a bearing and figure out what they want to do next. And so the program is designed for them to get to their 120 days. We work very closely with them through case management for employee services, workforce development, looking at parenting skills, how they're going to manage their own households. And so what we did about 12 years ago is built 29 transitional housing apartments just about 400 feet down the street from the campus that we have our crisis shelter. And moms and their kids can petition to move down into our 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartments, and they can live there for up to 2 years. And that time frame was designated because of the psychologists, psychiatrists, and the professional people we work with. What they've determined is once somebody has experienced systemic abuse for long periods of time, once they're out of trauma for about 4 months, it takes about 2 years for them to completely understand how they're going to live their lives as a parent, as somebody either in school or in a new career, how they're going to be as an employee, and how they're going to fit back into the community that they left when they needed to escape abuse. And so we have a beautiful campus of apartments just down the street, and that's where the moms and their kids set up house for the next 2 years if they like, to then determine what they're going to do next, but also to continue receiving support from our campuses down the street. And the transitional housing apartments are also right on the same campus as our education building, a clubhouse for them to use, a fitness center, and our donation and resource center. The Donation and Resource Center is really kind of the hub and the heart of Sojourner Center, in that when the women and children show up at our campus to start renewing their lives, they usually show up with a backpack, a trash bag, and that's it. And a lot of times, think about it, it's a mom with 3 or 4 children. And she has traversed the valley, a lot of times using the bus system, and they arrive with absolutely nothing. And so we built this Donation and Resource Center where they access everything they need to start their lives over, from 5 outfits, 5 pairs of shoes, all of the hygiene items they need, to when they move into an apartment, all of the furniture, mattresses, everything they need to furnish and stock a new apartment that they're freshly moving into. And so Sojourner Center really has become, I hate to use the term, but it's appropriate, a one-stop shop when it comes to families who've experienced domestic violence to truly start their lives over completely. And when the families leave our apartments, they still are able to access classes that we teach on a weekly basis. And right now we're doing our Zoom classes so that they can still access support groups on a weekly basis. And right now, all of our services, except for our classes in person, are done through Zoom, just like this is, because we're still working very hard at keeping everybody safe and clean and free from having to worry about getting a virus, while they're also working on domestic violence challenges and experiences. I also just like to mention, since this is a political time, people like to ask how to get involved. And I used to work for an organization called Duet in the Valley, and I worked with a lot of homebound seniors. And so they always asked how they could get involved from their homes. And so I found that people loved to get involved legislatively. And so one of the things that funds Sojourner Center is the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. And so we like people to just look to see who their legislators are who represent the authorization of the Violence Against Women's Act. Because we've talked about the fact that everybody can be a victim of domestic violence, it has no form of discrimination. If you have a friend or a family member who may have mentioned or confided in you that they have somebody who's coercive or abusive, the best thing you can do is be a good listener and share that you have access to resources, but only if they're interested in them. It's also just a great thing to go onto social media and just support your local domestic violence programs by liking information that they share, by sharing the information that they post about domestic violence services. And you can also just go to sojournercenter.org just to learn a little bit about our organization and see what we do, and to just know more in case you do know somebody who needs help or services. And I always like to end with question or comments. And I just like this little picture because when you see the little kids with their cats and dogs in the living room in our pet companion shelter, it's one of the most endearing and adorable things I've ever seen. So I just like to share that picture with people. And then at the end, my favorite book and my favorite quote. The book, of course, is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And the quote is, "What is to give light must endure burning." So if you have any questions, I'm certainly open, or comments or discussion.
Thank you. I actually love that last quote.
I've read that book 7 or 8 times, and there's always a different part of it that is poignant and reaches to my heart. But that quote, people call me cynical for sharing it, and I still find it to be so very true.
Yes. That's it. I see that there are a number of questions already with unmuted mics, but first of all, thank you so much. This is most informative, and I know that for those who do want to get involved some way. And I like how you give that easiest way. You could just like and share on Facebook, which is definitely true. And something that I think Stuart mentioned, that people might wonder if this even happens in the religious Orthodox Jewish community. And the answer is yes. I've seen it firsthand. And we've had just different instances over the last year since I've learned about Sojourner. Not that I know any families that have ended up in a shelter, but definitely even local community. There isn't, I liked how you said, a zip code. It's not even about religious, race. It is how people are, sadly. I'm going to stop your share, Gordon, so people can see you better when they ask questions. All right. So Ellen, I see that you unmuted your mic. Did you have a question?
Oh, well, I put it in the chat, but okay. What kind of items do you need donated for that center? And where do the children go to school, especially the ones that might be in upper elementary, junior high, high school?
So our greatest items right now, for as far as our needs are concerned, are nice bedding and blankets, because as our new Arizona weather has let us know, it went from 90 to 60 in a couple days. And so we went from air conditioning to heat settings in all of our participants' rooms. So we always seem to get surprised but we always need blankets and bedding, full-size shampoos and lotions, all of the items that people need in their homes. We do not like to take any more the small sizes, because when they stay here for 3 or 4 months and then move into our apartments, we really like to make it as much like it can be a living in their own home experience. So all of the things that we would purchase for our own homes and hygiene, and we always need women's personal hygiene items.
Sure.
I too.
Hi, I wanted to add another important item that they need, or items, are pillows and pillowcases. Yeah, Cheryl, when I call her, she said, "Oh, pillows always, anytime." Yeah, welcome.
And that's a great point, because a lot of people don't realize this, but everything we give them, we let them take when they leave, except of course for the furniture that is ours, like the beds. But everything they get in their apartments and hygiene and clothing, they get to keep all of that.
I'm curious why the name is Sojourner Truth, because we live in upstate New York.
Not Sojourner Truth, it's just Sojourner.
Sojourner, and we have Sojourner Truth statues, and she's part of the upstate New York history.
She was born Isabella Baumfree and then chose Sojourner Truth. And yes, she actually walked on her feet I think she was a 6'4" woman. And she walked upstate New York, Ohio, and just preached about women's rights and slavery. And so I'm so glad that she's recognized there. I think she is an under-recognized person in American history.
Thank you, Stuart.
We actually have a park and a statue dedicated to her.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Stuart, Phyllis, 1 sec. Stuart, you wanted to just add something from before?
Yeah, about donations of everything from what Gordon mentioned, all the way up that we at Sojourner pick up furniture. So if you're downsizing, changing, we certainly would appreciate thinking about donating to Sojourner. And Gordon, I found this the other day. Remember, I was looking, but if you could see, this is the picture.
Donation.
This is how our donation center looks every day. This is not done as a, for somebody, and they made it pretty. I want to show you how so when the women come in, as Gordon said, they get 5 outfits and their children get 5 outfits each. This allows the women to get outfits to go in interviews so they can continue providing on their own once they leave us. It's an amazing thing to see what our staff, again, I refer to them as angels, because these angels that provide 365, 24/7. What they provide the women at every facet, from getting a store together. When they walk in, it doesn't look like, it looks like going to a mini boutique. And the community provides this, whether it's your slightly gently used clothes or furniture. And so think of it.
Medical services in COVID isolation and quarantine sites.
Did we lose you on that?
New York State is working aggressively to contain the virus. This is
Stuart?
It's not me.
Oh, okay.
No, I was done. I was done saying, I was thought you wanted to talk.
Oh, okay. So Phyllis, did you have a question? I know you had mentioned one.
Not necessarily a question. Some years ago, my daughter worked for a large cosmetic company. And at the end of the season, she brought boxes of brand new cosmetics for women, actually high-end lipsticks, foundations and all that. And she said, can you do something with this, Mom? And I had heard through the grapevine about Sojourner, and I had called them, contacted them, and they gave me permission to come and drop off all these brand new high-end cosmetics. And I was so impressed by seeing the actual facility there. I just couldn't believe it. And I was so glad I could do that. Then I found just recently, I was told that Orzion Social Action Committee is now made Sojourner Center one of their projects. And I'm thrilled to be involved in that.
Well,
thank you.
That is so wonderful.
Thank you. Number one, thank you. We'll send you your endorsement check later. But I want to tell you, Orzion, we have some very close, dear friends that are supporters, the Marcuses, the Zemmels, and Orzion is a very giving community, and many of your congregants are supporters of Sojourner Center.
Oh, okay.
I'd like to make a comment too.
Sure, go for it, Janet.
Yeah, okay. So I came sort of in and out of here, so I don't know if I heard everything, but number one, I am truly touched and truly impressed with all that you're doing. And I've been a member of Brandeis National Committee, so we have a Mitzvah Maven group, and some of my friends are very involved in that. So I'm just a member that participates a lot, but I'm not really a leader of any of this. So that's one group that I'd like to be sure that we can contact you and see where your needs are, because these women, I mean, we really, I see you shaking your head, we really step up to the plate to help. And then I think about a year or so ago, National Council of Jewish Women had a project for Mother's Day to donate jewelry, all this costume jewelry. So I put together stuff. My mom, who is 96, she put together a whole bunch of stuff. And I have to say, I was a little disappointed in the way the women from a National Council handled it, because there was so much that we gave, and originally, it wasn't communicated properly exactly what we were going to do, because it wasn't enough for me just to put my jewelry into baggies and say, okay, here, so and so, take it down. I really wanted, because I'm a child person, okay, and I really wanted to go there and help the children pick out gifts for their mothers for Mother's Day. And I know that it was probably a security problem, or privacy, and that type of thing. But so when I do contact, I would want to know where is the need? And the need seems to be all over, but what wonderful projects can we put together, whether it's helping the women shop for their outfits, for their work outfits, whatever it is, or
Gordon,
something
can
with
we
children,
share your
teaching the
contact
children.
info?
And do the children go to school? And I know
Yes.
Ellen was asking, and then
Yes.
do they come back and do they get help with their homework? And do the moms go out to work a little bit and come back?
So
Gordon,
that's the
before you
second
answer-
part of the question. Oh, go ahead.
Gordon, before you answer, just so you know, Gordon will answer your questions, but for all of you on this call who are interested, an hour tour will give you a major insight to most of these questions. Wonderful question. And by the way, it's a mitzvah what you do, but clearly what you want to be hands-on, giving is receiving, and it's the greatest gift you can receive.
I know.
I get that feeling.
And so back to the education question, which is brilliant and important. And yes, most of the kids here who are school age attend the school district from which they came, unless it's not safe for them to do so. And then they go to the school district here, which is the Creighton School District. And although we're not in the best part of the valley, I have to say the teachers that teach in this district are teachers who teach because they really want to. And so the kids actually get a really great educational experience while they're at Sojourner. Right now, we have about a third of the children are still learning remotely on Chromebooks because of the pandemic. But we have had some kids go back to school. And before the pandemic, we had community members coming to do homework assistance with the kids, mentoring. We have people that used to help down at the donation center, help the women find great outfits and, find, the right color of makeup to go with their palette. And, are the mitzvah mavens, does Susan Guzman have anything to do with them?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Ellen Kirschenbaum and
Okay.
Patty Grossman and
Yeah.
Eileen Herberger.
Where Ellen drops off for Choose Drive,
Right.
Ellen provides the jewelry, and
Yeah.
she has been a regular contributor for the children, the women, for the last year and a half.
She's a good friend of mine too. So yeah.
Can I
will
jump in for a
definitely-
second so it doesn't go too far into the weeds on a conversation? Do you have, no, not on time. I'm not worried about time. Do you have a director of volunteering, or are you the contact for people who have these types of questions? Because I know
We do. Cheryl Hurd is the Director of Community Engagement, and I can send you all of that contact information so that everyone can have it. Or I
yeah,
can,
and can I share yours in the chat?
absolutely.
Okay. I
And
did that because Janet, those are great questions, but I'm sure some of it Gordon has to pawn off to the volunteer coordinator.
Oh, sure.
So I figure it's good to have the correct person for that.
also another piece of information for the participants today. Jewish Family Children's Services actually came through about a couple of years ago and acquired Sojourner. And even though Sojourner is a separate agency,
Yeah.
they provide the credibility, the discipline, and the stability, because philanthropic management of organizations is a very challenging. And when we had the opportunity to be acquired in the manner being a separate agency as continuing, it was a no-brainer. And so we have many of our community support Sojourner, and then Jewish Family Children's Services is involved from that.
We just left.
Thank you. And Ethel, you had a question?
Yes, oh, you're doing wonderful work, and I think it's terrific. But I want to know what is happening to the abuser, and do the women go back with the original husband because they are the father of their children, or and what do you do with men who are being abused?
So we are one of a few shelters in Arizona, and we do take men. And, you know, I would say that we probably serve 5 or 6 men a year, and we serve about 600 women a year. And what we have found is, first of all, males tend to abuse because it's about control. Females tend to be abusive because of probably experiencing an untreated serious mental illness. I mean, that of course plays into some of the men who are abusive as well. But for the offenders, there are some offender treatment programs. One is through Chrysalis, who is one of our colleague shelters. But the unfortunate fact about abusers is that it is typically so ingrained from such an early childhood point that they really do need to see a therapist and a specific type of therapy more than 3 to 4 times a week. And so it's hard to either afford it or to find a therapist who can work with somebody, but there are offender programs in the United States. And the closest one in the Valley that I know of is Chrysalis, and their website is noabuse.org. But we don't have offender services just because you don't get that many offenders that are seeking services.
No, but are they, when they're committing violent acts, are they jailed? What happens to the abuser?
Unfortunately, you know, a lot of them are jailed, but it's one of those weird social problems in the United States that has been hidden under the umbrella of a private family issue. And so a lot of times, you know, the men were just hit on the wrist and, you know, told to go about their lives. And then the women are stuck with having to find a safe place to live with the kids and all of that. So a lot of men now are starting to experience incarceration and heavier prices. But just 5 years ago, this big national poll went out asking abusers the #1 reason they abused. And their #1 reason was because I can do it and I get away with it.
Right.
I guess does anyone else have any other questions? Or Stan,
Yes.
did you have a question? Go for it.
I had a question. Where do you get your furniture and your clothing? Where does that come from for your place?
It primarily comes from community members, people who, but now of course, like the shelter, our shelter furniture, we have a really great relationship with Copenhagen Furniture, and they get these weird, like a little rip on a big, beautiful leather couch. And so they give us all of their damaged furniture, and you can't tell it's furniture. We use that for our common areas here in the shelter. And then donors provide, you know, the finances for the shelter, like the beds and the stuff that's in all of our participants.
The thing I was thinking about is we have Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah, I'm a volunteer at Habitat for Humanity here in New York.
Nice.
And we have done a lot of things with the United Red Cross and the Salvation Army. And I wonder, I know we've toured the Habitat for Humanity locations around Phoenix, and it's totally different because where we are, it's all furniture, it's all kitchen goods. Where you are, it's construction material,
Yes.
and Venetian blinds and fans. But that's
Absolutely.
nothing like what we have, which is all furniture, appliances, big appliances, small appliances, bedding. And I think maybe that's something that you should tap into because they would definitely help you out.
I think if it's they normally sell it stuff,
Yes.
obviously,
Yeah.
at a low cost. But if it's another organization,
If
that
it's
is
another
basically-
NGO.
yeah,
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
you know, we were one of the first nonprofits, and we were actually the first nonprofit in Arizona to partner with Habitat for Humanity here. And they actually helped us turn a derelict nursing home into a new domestic violence shelter. And so then they gave us a special discount to their restores
Right.
so that we
right.
could go and get their like commercial washers and dryers that they had. So
Right,
we
exactly.
do have a relationship with them, but it does ebb and flow.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's just it. That's just it.
Yes.
In fact, he was the architect for one of their homes too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
place had, I did measuring in the middle of the winter and the temperature was like about 12 degrees and there was no drawings. I just had to go in and measure the place. and I had to quit because I couldn't take off my gloves. It was too cold. I had to come
Well, and
back.
we can't handle it in Phoenix today because it's
Yeah.
60.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you do great work, and I mean, I wonder, do you also have a relationships with the schools?
Yes.
I mean, because
One
a
of the
lot
great-
of people would not come forth unless they're recommended, from another facility.
One of the great things that happened as a result of our relationship with the schools during the pandemic this summer is that the schools were still mandated by the government to buy certain amounts of food for low-income children that they needed to feed. But the problem was then the children couldn't come to the schools. So all of the children at Sojourner Center for the entire summer, we didn't have to pay for the kids' meals because the schools paid for the kids' meals for us because they had all the food that they had to distribute anyway. So we do have really great little interesting relationships with the schools. And now that you've mentioned it, I will get back in touch with Habitat and see what we can cook up now.
Yeah. And another question is, do you provide employment facilities?
We have a workforce development program, but there are so many nonprofits in Phoenix that do the employment facilities. It would really be a duplication of services for us to do it here.
Right.
Now I saw Chu raising her hand.
Yeah, go for it, Chu.
Gordon, I'm sorry, just quickly. A lot of people buy from Amazon. Gordon, are you still in collaboration or, because from time to time when I purchase from Amazon, I see do you want to, it's about Sojourner, I can't remember the details, but.
Amazon Smile.
Smile, yes.
Yes.
Well,
And
okay.
we were just last week, right after the event, we were updating our account, and I just haven't checked with the person who's doing that to make sure that it's good because the holiday season is quickly approaching.
Yeah. Please don't forget Sojourner.
For those of you who know what they're referring to, if you shop on Amazon, instead of just going to Amazon.com, you would go to smile.amazon.com and you choose a charity. It gets, I'm not sure what the percentage is, but a little bit.
I think last quarter we brought in $1,791 or something from Amazon Smile.
Nice.
So it adds up.
Yeah, so that's another great way to give without even ever noticing it out of your pocket.
Exactly.
That's the way I'll phrase it. It doesn't add any extra cost to your purchase. Let's put it that way. It's not like they're rounding up your purchase to the zero. But anyone else have any other questions? This was, I know, most informative. And I do hope for those of you that had not heard of Sojourner that this is a very tangible way to get involved in different ways. I didn't know about the furniture, so that's actually really good to know.
Well, could you put the information on
other charities?
Could you put the information on your websites if people want to donate?
Yes.
I can actually put it in the next email as well. Let me write that down as a reminder.
Now, the question is, did you name the organization Sojourner for Sojourner Truth or a place to sojourn?
No, it is named after, as a matter of fact, right in our entryway, we have, you know what, I'm just
froze.
Yep.
See me?
Hold on, we don't see you yet.
I'll just show you.
Let's see Sojourner Truth there. It's in the entranceway to our
So
admin.
we have a
You're losing
picture
your
of Sojourner
Wi-Fi as you walk.
lobby. And then we
Oh,
also
there she is.
her,
That's her.
her speech, Ain't I a Woman?
Right.
And so
You've
we-
got to go to Sojourner Truth Park and get the picture of her statue because she's a young girl.
How about if you go to the park, take a picture and email it to
I
us?
was gonna say, thank you.
That's tricky for us.
Wear a mask and go.
Granddaughter.
It's in a village called Port Ewan.
Is it important?
Yeah, EWEN. Sojourner Truth. And then you could put it on your stationery. It's very pretty.
You know what? Let's just
We
go
know
find
this
it
stuff.
online.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There you go.
Yeah, that's a
Port
good idea.
Ewan.
Online.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
I found it.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, I'm
Share
doing
my
the same
screen for
thing.
a half a second, and then
There
you'll
you
see.
go.
Let me just get it for you.
If people like us, we don't think
Is
of
that the
That's
one?
it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh,
Ay, vez, mira.
wow.
There you go. That's it. Actually, you know the woman who started the campaign.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It's in this little seated park right off the main drag, a little town
Maybe-
called Port Huon. Who knew why?
Maybe
New
you
York.
need to get a person to commission someone to do one for you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, that's beautiful.
Is
there
that
it is.
here in New York or Michigan?
We are in Woodstock, New York, and this is the town called Port Huon, which is across the Hudson River.
Okay,
It
'cause I
actually, on
Googled
the
it,
sign,
you know,
it says something else.
On our side.
On our side of the
Yeah.
river.
Yeah.
On the sign, it says town of,
20 minutes from here.
do you
Yeah.
see that? On the
Yeah.
town of Esopus? I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Sojourner
Esopus.
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 Oh,
Esopus.
it's Opus, there it is.
We have so many mispronunciations of that.
Well, that-
Some people say Esopus.
Oh,
It's
that's-
really Esopus. It's the river.
There's a town here, Saugerties, and it's Saugerties, and people call it Sourgerties. So it's
Or sugar ties. Yes.
All right,
it's
well,
like-
I'm just,
it's like-
I don't mind, we can stay on and schmooze, but I'm gonna officially wrap it up and just say thank you so much for
Okay,
everything.
thank you. Good
Yeah.
job.
Thank you. Thank
All
all
right.
of you. You guys
Thank
made
you.
my day.
Thank you
Yay.
so much.